Right, right. And we're going to try to cover all of your fields of research. So try to do this show like you're doing the show on the fly, because I take getting information out very seriously. And that means trying to maybe do some things on the fly just to get all of your subjects covered. So I'll
Okay.
find some questions to ask you. But first of all, introduce yourself, what you do, and I think we'll talk about the therapy aspect before we get into ETs.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, I'm a psychotherapist for many years, licensed in 1976. So I've had a lot of years of experience. And after several years of doing regular psychotherapy, I became trained in doing hypnotic regression therapy. Mostly in those years, in the 1980s, I was doing past life regression therapy. And then in 1991, people started coming to me who had had very peculiar, confusing, oftentimes disturbing experiences of being visited by unusual beings and being taken away for a couple of hours and then returned. And people wanted to know what were those experiences all about and what exactly happened, because they didn't remember most of those encounters. So that got me into doing the regressions for people who have extraterrestrial encounters. And then, additionally, I became very interested in 1990 in the crop circle phenomenon. I felt immediately when I first saw a notice about a lecture being given about mysterious patterns showing up in the fields of Britain, I thought, wow, we're being communicated with by something, some intelligence or somebody out there in space. And I rushed over to England in 1991 to research that for myself, to find the crop circles and go into them and see what I thought about them. And I became so hooked, actually dedicated to continuing to research the crop circles, that I had been doing that now for 24 years, going to England every summer and researching the crop circles, going into lots of them. I've been in probably almost 2,000 crop circles by now, and I also lead tours to crop circles in the summertime, which are really delightful adventures. So I continue with all this work, regular psychotherapy, regression therapy for past lives, and for anything that the person wants to remember more clearly or find out new things about, including many, many of the extraterrestrial encounters. And I continue with the crop circle work. So from my point of view, I am a really fortunate person who gets to do all these intriguing, wonderful, and helpful things. So does that give you enough?
Yeah, just seem to be on mute every time you talk. But yeah, that was a good introduction, and I think I'd like to get started with the therapy aspect. So how do past life regression therapy and hypnotherapy work? Silence the skeptics, if you will.
Yes, silence the skeptics. I know a lot of people have misunderstandings, I think, about hypnosis. And some people have the impression that, oh, it's mumbo jumbo, or that the person is being steered or led into certain directions. But it really isn't that way if done responsibly, and I try to do every hypnosis session responsibly. First of all, there are two major kinds of hypnosis, and I do both of those kinds. The first kind is when somebody comes and seriously wants to get rid of a fear or anxiety or a pattern of panic attacks, or they want to lose weight, or they want to quit smoking, or they want to be more proactive at their jobs, or they want to get over their fear of flying. I mean, there are so many things that people come for that they really want help with and changes in. So that kind of hypnosis involves my preparing them for at least 2, sometimes more, sessions in which we get together the kinds of suggestions that will be the most helpful for them and that will fit them, the kinds of suggestions that they will actually receive and not try to sort of blank out or ward off. So I think that the custom-made aspect of the hypnosis that I do is extremely important. I never just give generic suggestions without really understanding how the person operates and what suggestions they will receive. So that is one kind of hypnosis. And then the regression hypnosis is so fascinating. I do the same process of deep relaxation to help them get to be open enough to their subconscious minds and the material they're in, and also their higher knowing. In many cases, the knowingness that they can learn from their own soul. And we go back to an event, usually, an event that they may have wondered about, when something peculiar happened, and they may have seen some unusual lights, balls of lights, or they may have seen a UFO, or they may have seen a being or 3 beings in their room at night when they awakened in the middle of the night. And yet they might not remember more than just a moment or 2 after that, but they realized later that they had been away, they'd been taken away and returned, and they were all right, but maybe feeling kind of mysterious about what happened, and they would like to know the details of what happened. So all of those things can come to light during the regression. Regression is also used frequently for going back to much earlier times that don't involve extraterrestrials, but it might take us into a past life. For instance, if somebody says, as somebody did recently, I just have this terrible aversion to being touched on my neck. I just can't stand anything around my neck, a person coming closer to my neck, touching my neck, kissing my neck, even wearing a turtleneck sweater or a scarf. I just can't do it. In other words, they have some sort of phobia about their neck. And we'll go back to the source of their having that phobia about being touched on the neck. And we don't know at the beginning of the regression, we have no idea where the person might end up in the regression. So that's why I try to keep it very open and very neutral, that we're just going back to the source of that, to the root, to the cause, to the beginning of that aversion. And frequently, but not always, the regression takes us back to a previous lifetime, or what certainly seems to be a previous lifetime. And the person relives the scenario, the main points of what was happening in that lifetime, particularly the points at which they developed this terrible aversion of being touched on the neck. So it's quite a vivid, dramatic scenario often that comes up. And the point of doing this is that once the person consciously knows what they have carried over in their subconscious mind and also in their soul knowing, the soul history of that person, and it's conscious now, then they can work with it and sort of let go of the distress of it, since they know what caused it. And in an instance like that, when somebody's had something very traumatic happen in a past life, and particularly if they died during that trauma, I like to, after we found the material from the regression, I like to do a healing process, a clearing, a releasing of that trauma that set into the body in that lifetime. And it's a spiritual process, and I just help them to let go of that, because now they understand what caused the problem, and they know that they're not in those circumstances anymore, and that they are doing all right now, living another lifetime. And so they let go of the trauma, and that means that they don't have those symptoms anymore in this life. That in this example, the trauma, the aversion of being touched on the neck. So it really helps somebody's life go a lot better. And people do go around, many people go around with certain very strong aversions, like they're afraid of the water, or they're afraid of being in high places, or they're very afraid of being in enclosed places. They're gaining weight like mad because they have this underneath sense that they've got to have enough food. They've got to be sure that they have enough food. These are just some of many examples I'm giving you. And it goes back, if we do a regression, it goes back to what caused that pattern and what causes those fears, or what causes that behavior in this lifetime. So it's very useful to find out where these things come from and release them, so that the person can go ahead with this life no longer plagued by whatever that condition or whatever that belief was from a past time. So it's wonderful. I think that it would be great if more therapists would incorporate some of these methods in their psychotherapeutic work, because it's so effective. So do you have any more questions about that?
Yeah, I do. In regards to hypnosis, I remember my senior year of high school, post-prom party, we had a hypnotist, and he told everybody, make sure you come up here with the mentality that you want to be hypnotized. However, in the summer between my junior and senior year of high school, I took part in a college summer study program, and there was a hypnotist named Tom DeLuca who did a hypnotism show, and he said he didn't have to tell everybody, come up here with the mentality that you want to be hypnotized. Now, I'm going to guess that all of your clients would want to be hypnotized because they seek answers to their questions. But can you offer any hypothesis as to why some hypnotists would need to say, make sure you come up here with the mentality that you want to be hypnotized, and others don't?
Well, I think it is very true, first of all, that some people think, oh, I don't know if I'd really want to experience that, or I don't know if I could be hypnotized. That's a very frequent question. And so they feel reserve about it. They're curious because they're there at that sort of entertainment, and they want to see other people go through it. But, they don't want themselves to be subjected to that. So, some people have a lot of hesitation or even aversion to that. And many people, almost everyone who comes to me for either kind of hypnosis, they usually say, I don't know if I can be hypnotized. So it's very important that I explain right away to anybody who comes to me that hypnosis is not what they probably think. Hypnosis is not being out or under or asleep. Hypnosis is simply a nice state of deep relaxation with the eyes closed and the attention focused on the inside of them, their attention focused inside themselves. And so that they're not distracted by everything around us, everything that they would see or people moving or people talking or whatever. It's just sort of a concentrated, relaxed, focused time in which they can receive the suggestions. If it's the kind of hypnosis where I'm helping somebody to change a certain form of behavior that's been bothersome to them, or change a certain belief that's been plaguing them, or the same thing applies if it's the kind of hypnosis that we use in regression, that the person is just available for knowing that, knowing what's coming up visually, mentally, emotionally, as they get back to the source of their particular condition that they want to know about. So I think that the man you're talking about, the hypnotist, he realized that some people going to those events definitely have an aversion, and they're very skeptical. And so they would not be good subjects for any kind of hypnosis. In fact, I've learned in the various hypnosis trainings that I've had over the years, I've had about 3 different courses specifically in hypnosis, and then also 5 years of training in this past life regression therapy. And every single trainer says right away that hypnosis is not being out or under or asleep, but is just a nice state of relaxation in which the person is open to either receiving the suggestions that will be helpful, or open to the scenario that will come up inside that will show the cause or the source of the problem that they're working on. So your man who did that hypnosis demonstration for entertainment, it was of great interest to him, I'm sure, to have only people come up for hypnosis who would be very open to the process, and they would be highly suggestible, which would be very helpful for him, because then he could do a wonderful demonstration. And everybody would say, "Oh, wow, isn't that interesting?" He wouldn't want to try to hypnotize somebody who was resisting and feeling against it, because that wouldn't be a good demonstration. So it's interesting that what I've learned in these different trainings is that the hypnotist standing up on the stage or in the front of the room or wherever, that he's looking at the group of people who are looking at him, the people who've come for this, and as he's giving a little patter, little conversation first before getting into the hypnosis, he's sort of warming up the audience as people do, engaging with them. And as he's doing that, he's looking for the people who appear to be much more relaxable and highly suggestive. So he sees the people whose eyelids are kind of drooping down here and there, or maybe their head begins to sort of nod, or maybe they begin to have that sort of glazed look in their eyes. So as he's giving his little spiel, he's noticing who has those suggestions or symptoms that they would be easy to do the hypnosis with. And then when people raise their hands, he chooses only those people who look like they would be highly suggestible to come up. And sometimes people are eager to come up and be hypnotized because they're curious, but they're not highly suggestible, in his opinion, so he just simply won't choose them. So it's very interesting that the people who come up are, as you say, willing, in fact, maybe even wanting to be hypnotized. And then there are always others in the audience who don't. So that's what that happens. And also, we need to consider that that sort of hypnosis is entertainment hypnosis. It's not for working seriously on some sort of problem or finding out important information. Mine always has a deeper purpose like that. It is part of my therapy practice. It's not just for fun and games, and certainly not for entertainment. There really is a difference. So I hope that helps to clarify things a little bit.
Yes, it does, Barbara. And I'd like to cover crop circles for about 15 minutes before we start taking calls. And then after we take some calls, we'll talk about extraterrestrials and ET abductions. But really want to get into crop circles here, because during my interview with Australian ET contactee and consciousness expert George Kavaslis, we talked about how crop circles, the ones that you see, are actually, it's a percentage factor, because some are made by extraterrestrials, some are made by secret technology that's kept out of the public arena that the government and Illuminati forces own, and then there's some that are created by the consciousness of Mother Earth, and then there's all the Doug and Dave Chorley crop circles, which we're not even going to bother getting into because it's a total waste of time, all the ones that were made by hoaxers. And if you believe Doug and Dave Chorley did all those crop circles, then you need mental help. So yeah, so let's forget about those crop circles. And for the purposes of this argument, Kavaslis told me that the majority of the crop circles are made by ETs, whether malevolent or benevolent, that want to guide humanity in a particular direction. And I'm assuming that the way they do that is the symbology of the crop circle has a subconscious effect on us, which guides us in a particular direction. So can you clarify, that's true about the majority of crop circles, and then after we do that, get into the consciousness of Mother Earth crop circles and the ones created by secret government technology?
Well, I must say, first of all, that we have these theories, but I don't think there'd be anybody living on the earth who would know very specifically, how many are made by which source. And I don't even know, having been so involved in this for 24 years, I don't even know specifically that any of the crop circles are made by, specific extraterrestrials. Now, they may very well be. I am totally open to that possibility. But we do know that many of them seem to be made by some other intelligence. I think that the great majority of crop circles are made by some other highly creative intelligence of some sort. And whether that's embodied as individual extraterrestrials or not, I don't think we know that. I don't think anybody knows that. It is very easy to assume that. There is a sense very often in some of the wonderful crop circles, there's a sense of presence. There's a sense of we who are in the crop circles are being known. It is being acknowledged that we're in one. And especially if we're appreciating that crop circle. I mean, I've had this again and again, and so have some of my friends and colleagues who research crop circles every year, like I do, that in some crop circles, more than others, we absolutely feel that we are known for being in there, and we have a sense that we can talk to that intelligence, and we can thank that intelligence. I make a point of doing that because that intelligence seems to be present. Now, that doesn't mean that we see anyone or see anything other than the crop circle itself and the lovely surroundings and the field of the whole crop. We don't see beings there, but I really mean it. There's a palpable sense of feeling that presence. And from my experience, that's always a very favorable presence. helpful. It's benign. It may even feel loving. I've never felt any presence in a crop circle of any malevolence, of any ill being, ill intent, judgment, anything of that sort. They always feel either neutral or positive to me. Now, this is a very subjective thing, of course. Each person's experience might be a little bit different, but we do, in many of the crop circles that we consider genuine, in other words, not made by people, but made by some other intelligence, some other force, we do feel that it's worth communicating with that, whatever it is. And so a lot of us will take time in a crop circle to sit down or lie down right on the ground and meditate. And sometimes we even get messages like channeling. Now, I don't consider myself to be a channel. I know some people are. But I have had a number of experiences where sitting and meditating or lying down in a crop circle that I will get a repeated, simple phrase, which seems to be the main intent or the main meaning of that particular crop circle. It's worth saying that there is a tremendous difference between these genuine crop circles and the man-made or hoaxed crop circles. With the hoaxed crop circles, of course, men, maybe a few women, go through the field with a big stomping board that is has a rope or chain or something up around their neck so if they can hold it, it won't fall off. And they are pressing down on that board with one foot to the other, pressing over the crop into the pattern they want to create. Well, because of this stomping down, or even using a garden roller in a few cases that I've heard about, the stalks of the plants, the crop, they actually break because of all that harsh pressure. So they break, just about an inch or half an inch above ground level, and so that they're flattened down. And when they break, they lose their contact with their own roots, and so they die. So, and they don't continue to grow or anything. And so when you go into a man-made crop circle, which I've done a number of times, it just seems flat, dead, lifeless, and indeed all those thousands of stalks pressed down have died because of the cracking where they bend over and losing the nourishment from their roots. So they have no energy in them. They don't have any luster because they're not still living. And this is in sharp contrast to the surrounding plants, all the standing plants around the crop circle, which have that sense of life and luster, and they're still doing fine. And so there's really quite a contrast. There's no energy. If you go in with electrostatic voltmeters or magnetometers or microwave detectors, some people go in with those, or if you go in with dowsing rods, which I use, or pendulums, any kind of measurement indication or equipment. In the man-made crop circles, there's no resonation of any kind of change or any kind of increase in energy. Again, that sort of flat, dull, dead feeling. And also, they usually look a little bit more messily made. The laid down stalks don't look so even and parallel. They may kind of look a little bit messier, a little bit askew, shall we say. But let's contrast that now to what we call genuine crop circles, which are made by some kind of mysterious source, and we can't really pin that down, but we can know that people have observed radiant balls of light circling through the field where a crop circle subsequently is made, maybe a few or several hours later. And there is video footage of a 1996 crop circle at a place called Oliver's Castle, and the video picked up about 7 seconds worth of a crop circle allegedly being made by balls of light. So in that video, you can see a single ball of light circling around, making a center circle of what is going to be that formation. And then you see 2 balls of light parallel to each other, swooping low over the field as spokes, little arms, pathways, are radiating out from that circle with a little circle on each end of the spokes. And then 2 more balls of light come from a different direction, flying low fairly rapidly over the field, over that area of the field, and then the spokes all get extended with another little ring around each one, and the crop circle is complete. Now, that has been witnessed, and that has even been videotaped. And also sometimes it's been observed that a beam of light seems to be coming down from the sky right into a big crop field, and then people have observed there's sort of a spiraling and a spinning right in the crop, and the laying down of a crop right down to ground level from this beam. In one case, a young man in England followed with his eyes, followed the beam going up into the sky, and noticed that it came from a metallic-looking disc-shaped craft. So that has been observed. And still other people, not many, but a few, have been walking by a crop field in England, and they could see what looked like or seemed like a pathway of wind coming across the top of the crop, sort of dislodging pieces, little pieces of the wheat or whatever the crop was, sort of flying in the air. And then this invisible wind sort of thing, whatever it was, stopped at a certain location in the field, and then these people could observe a spinning going on in the crop right there, and the crop being swirled and laid down, and that turned out to be a new crop circle. So people have actually seen these things. Now, there are some wonderful biophysicists, the BLT team, Burke and Levengood and Talbot. Nancy Talbot is a good spokesperson for this. And Dr. Levengood at Pinewood Lab in northern Michigan, he and his team members tested many, many plants, thousands of plants that were sent to him from English crop circles, and he received some also from American crop circles, and tested those against control plants, that is, plants that were in the same crop but outside of the crop circle. And he and his team determined, this was several years ago, determined that they thought that the crop circles were made by energy plasma vortexes. Vortexes like a spinning cone shape coming down from the upper atmosphere, coming right down into a field of growing crop with tremendously high heat. In fact, he figured that there would be at least 850 degrees of heat in that vortex of energy coming down, and he determined that it was a combination of plasma energies that would make up this spinning vortex. And when it would hit the plants where the crop circle was being made, it emitted tremendous heat. But because the crop circles seemed to be placed over underground water, so it seemed like the vortex hitting the plants would also be drawing up the moisture or the water from underneath the surface of the soil, creating a steam effect. And the steam effect would allow the plants to be laid over with just a nice smooth bend, no breaking, no cracking, just above ground level. So those plants, in what we call the genuine crop circles, continue to grow and ripen and come to full maturity. So right through to when the whole field is harvested and then eventually tilled and mulched under, those plants in the crop circle hold their special energy left by this vortex. And that energy has even been tested over a period of years, that for subsequent generations of plantings in the field, up to 8 that I know about, maybe that's even continuing now, that the energy of the original crop circle stayed in that place in the farmland where it had originally landed. So something really major is going on there, something very effective, that the energy of it would even last 8 subsequent years and perhaps more. So, my goodness, it's really a powerful effect. So now we have this theory of the genuine crop circles, the vortex theory. We have the balls of light theory. We have the invisible wind-like substance or force, whatever that is, making crop circles. And it's so astonishing that these genuine crop circles can be made so quickly. Even a very large, complex crop circle, it's been determined, could be made within 15 to 30 seconds. I would think it would take 15 to 30 hours, but according to the video and according to reports of people who've seen a field, turned around, looked the other direction for several seconds, and then turned around in the daytime, and then there is a whole new, perfectly rendered crop circle. It's been determined that even with a lot of complex features in the crop circle, a lot of geometric perfection and intricacy of design, that the crop circles may have only taken 15 to 30 seconds. So that is some remarkable force, some remarkable intelligence that is doing this. I know that there are theories that there is a secret government or maybe Air Force or some department project of using beam technology or whatever their very advanced instrumentation is to make the crop circles. I know that that's a theory, an idea, but I have no indication of absolute proof or certainty that some of the crop circles are made that way, but I think it's certainly an interesting question. And then there are theories, again, underlined theories, guesses, and some of them are very, very interesting, that there may be earth elementals, or maybe the earth itself is pulling down the plants into a crop circle pattern. And again, I don't think, as far as I know, there's no proof of that, but it certainly is an interesting consideration, an interesting theory. So we just don't know. We do know that some of them are made mysteriously. I think the greater portion are made by this mysterious unknown source, which is part of the great intrigue about the whole thing. And some are made by people. In fact, I've met some of those people, quite a few of them over the years, and had long conversations with them. One man that I met last year, 2013, and had a long conversation with him, which I was very pleased to do. He was part of a small team of young men in England who, on occasion, not too often, they say, on occasion will go out and make a crop circle in the middle of the night. And this young man that I talked to said that he was the one in that small group who would meditate and channel a design from what he felt was a higher source, some higher intelligences, and he would draw the pattern that he was channeling. And this would be at home in the evening, and then subsequently he would get together with his buddies, and they would take that pattern on paper, take it out into the field, and then make that particular crop circle in that design. Other hoaxers have told me that once in a while it happens that one of them will be awakened in the middle of the night and told, he doesn't see who's telling them, but like some other force, some other intelligence is telling them telepathically to get up, to get his friends, to go out into a certain field in a certain location, and with his friends, his hoaxer friends, start making a crop circle. And sometimes they have actually done this, not really knowing from whom this direction has come, but knowing that it seemed insistent and very powerful and very clear about what they were to do. So there they would be out in a field, stomping down the crop in a certain design, just following that direction that seemed to be coming mentally to them, and they would have no idea what the pattern was that they were making until a few hours later they'd come back in the light of day and they would see that pattern, and very often they'd be amazed. Oh my goodness, I didn't know we were making that pattern. We were just following directions that were given to us in our minds. So that's a very interesting part of this whole phenomenon too. As you can see, there's really a lot to it. And one of the things that intrigues me the very most, I love this, is that we people down here on Earth, we seem, when we have the intention, we seem to be able to ask for a particular pattern or particular elements of a pattern to be made into a crop circle. So in order to do that, we just decide on what we want as a design. It might be an idea. It might be asking for a symbol of a certain thing, like of the Japanese culture, as one group actually did from Japan in 1991, or 1999, I should say. Or we don't know whom we're asking, but we ask the crop circle makers, the real ones, the genuine ones, to make such and such a pattern. And sometimes we will draw a certain pattern so that we will all in that little group being focused on that particular design. And many, many times after doing that, we have noticed that a few hours later in the dark of that night, that pattern is enacted into a new crop circle. And last year, very happily, when I led two separate groups, one after the other, into crop circles, with each of those groups, we had a time, usually around dinner time, when we were all collected together, and we would decide on a pattern we would like to see as a crop circle, and closed our eyes and meditated on it and pictured the design and asked the genuine circle makers, not knowing who they are, to give us that crop circle. If they would, we'd be grateful. We were thankful. And then the very next morning, in both of these cases, we heard about a new crop circle and went right to it. And lo and behold, the intelligence, had given us the new crop circle that we had requested. So when that happens, that is fascinating. And we just know that whoever or whatever, however, made that crop circle, it was not people, because there were no other people hearing that we were making this request. It was not government, because we were sure we were not being spied on by anybody in the military or the government or anybody with high technical equipment here on Earth. But it does seem like the crop circle was being made by some sort of other, I like to think of, higher source of intelligence. So it is amazing and very exciting when we get into that, what seems like an interactive effect between us and the intelligence that's making crop circles. So do you have any more questions about that?
No, I do not. We're going to take some calls now, and then after that we'll get into ETs and ET abductions. But for now, first caller will be area code, let me make sure you're on the area code 720. You are on the air. Welcome.
Hello, hi. I am actually just listening to the show.
Oh, okay. Well, you're more, if that's the case, fine. But any question? Any question at all?
No, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks
Just
for calling in.
enjoying
Glad you're learning something on this show. Feel free to call in anytime if you have a question for a guest. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Later. Okay, next caller will be area code 678. Let me make sure you're on the air here. Area code 678, you are on the air. Welcome.
Hi, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay.
You have some good listeners this time.
Yeah, I do. Usually people don't call in, but just glad I have some people on my board. All right,
yes.
Later. Okay, so maybe the reason people don't call in is because we take in from getting information on this show very seriously, and callers don't want to call in because that means less information to get out. But hey, I could use more callers, so I don't mind. Some callers have good information. So, area code 402. You are on the air. 402. Welcome.
Hi. I have a general question, but then I had a specific experiential question, but it's kind of in the category.
Hello?
Oh, dear. She went away.
Yeah, it didn't say she hung up, but she's
Didn't sound
so,
like it.
yeah. So
She
area
disappeared.
code 402. I didn't even get your name. When you get back, I'd love to get your name. So hang on, let me try putting her off the air and then putting her back on the air again. Okay, let's try this. Area code 402. Can you hear us? Area code 402.
Well, you know, it's okay with me if we have questions or if we don't have questions. I wondered if you yourself, Andrew, might have anything that you particularly wonder about the crop circles.
Well, one thing I can safely assert is we can use our own consciousness as humans to create them. At the In5D Return to Atlantis conference in Sarasota, Florida, that was back in October, a bunch of people and me gathered in a big circle on the beach and meditated, and then the clouds above us formed into a circle. If you can do that with clouds, there's no question you can do that with the materials in the crop circle in the ground. But
well, that's exciting. That must have been a really wonderful event.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Reminds me, that reminds me of a lovely thing that happened, probably about 8 years or so ago in England. I was at a conference put on by a wonderful group called the Wiltshire Crop Circle Study Group. They've been very involved in crop circles for years already, and they put on a lovely conference. And at this conference, there were about 200 of us at least that were standing out on a big lawn next to the conference hall. And we were holding hands in 3 circles, one circle outside of the other, almost like 3 rings, parallel rings. And we were at 11 o'clock in the morning, we were chanting and almost singing as a group of 200 people, just very simple tones, like chanting tones. And this went on for quite a while, maybe about 20 minutes, these 3 parallel rings of people sending out these lovely tones. Well, later we realized that a pilot of a very small plane, a microlight, was flying from the airfield just a few miles away from where we were doing this chanting. And he was somebody who flew many times a day, taking one passenger up at a time. And he was also very keen about crop circles. And he was always looking down at the land when he was flying a passenger around, looking to see if there were any new crop circles. So before we were doing that singing at 11 o'clock that particular morning, he flew over a certain field and just noticed no crop circle there, none over here, none in the adjacent field. And then when he came back, maybe 15 or 20 minutes later, over that same field, there was a brand new crop circle. And guess what it was? It was in the shape of 3 rings, one outside of the other, 3 parallel rings. And then it had little lines looking like radiating sound, how you might symbolize that pictorially. Dozens of very thin lines radiating out from the center of that pattern. So we didn't even see pictures of that crop circle until probably the next day, or at least later on that day. And we thought, oh my gosh, that looks like a depiction of our group of people, 3 rings of people, sending out all these beautiful tones. And we think that it was made, well, we know it was made actually, right during the same time that we were doing all that chanting. Now, who made it or how it was done, we just don't know, but it seems to many of us that this intelligence I've been talking about, that's not necessarily planetary, it's other, that this intelligence knew or was inspired by this group of people chanting, sending out these beautiful tones in a state of meditation, that somehow got picked up and was made into a crop circle. So when things like that happen, oh my goodness, we are so excited. It's great. Any more callers on the line?
Well, it says that area code 402 caller has dropped. There was another caller that just called in. Hopefully that's the same person calling in from a different number. But area code 402, if you want to call in, by all means call in. I'd like to hear about that personal. Oh yeah, you are. Oh, good. Yeah, I do have you on. Hopefully you won't drop off this time.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm near where I can get a cell signal. So, yeah, no, my personal experience has to do with what she was talking about earlier. I'm really fascinated with this whole consciousness and the human consciousness being able to create crop circles. It's the first I've heard of that aspect. So it's very interesting. And that answered my question right when I was asking it. You answered it, even though I dropped the line. So
okay, you heard it anyway.
Yes, I did. It's fascinating. My personal experience with being somewhere else for a certain amount of time, I've had at least 2 of those experiences that I know there's missing time. I don't feel anything negative happened. I feel like, if anything, it was positive, although I don't remember it.
Okay.
But I continue to have kind of a growing story around that piece of property and what happens there, and I go back and I stay longer and longer, so because it certainly seems to bring out more experiences.
Oh.
And I actually, I don't know if I met you at the conference, but you were at the Embracing Contact conference.
Yes.
That was yes, and that was a very interesting conference. And I had thought about, well, do I really want to find out what happened, or will that just come to my consciousness when maybe there's a timing involved? Maybe there was information given that has a kind of time release, effect to it for proper use of the information.
Well,
so
that's certainly, it's certainly possible that there's a time release aspect. Many people are being downloaded with information either during an encounter experience with extraterrestrials, or even sometimes apart from being right with them, or at least they're not aware of any beings being with them. They might be asleep, they might be meditating, they might be so deeply asleep that they absolutely cannot be awakened by anybody who really wants them to wake up. I have several cases of that sort of thing. By the way, I want to say before we get too far into that I've had the great fortune of regressing more than 1,100 individuals to extraterrestrial encounters. And some of these people, fortunately, they live close enough to me in Southern California that they've been able to come for many regressions. Some have come for 40 regressions. Another person came for about 50. Another person came for about 60 regressions over a period of years. So there's a tremendous amount of material that comes out of that, and I'm still doing that work. And somebody who came to me just yesterday morning when I was in Florida, speaking at a conference and doing regressions, she was given information during the encounter. She was aware that this information was flooding into her, but she wasn't picking up the specifics of the information just then. And the beings who were giving her this information telepathically said, don't worry about it. You don't need to know this now. You don't need to remember it now, but you will know it when the time comes. Now, we don't know what that's referring to, but apparently sometime in the future, she will have all that knowledge and maybe directions for action. We don't really know because that time hasn't come yet. But this is happening to a lot of people. It seems like this is quite normal that you're experiencing it. And many people wonder, oh gosh, do I really want to look into these things that have happened because they've been aware of the beginning of an experience or perhaps the very end of an encounter, and they may have some indications on their bodies, maybe not, but maybe they have indications on their bodies that they've been with somebody and somebody has done something, leaving little symbol marks or little dots or little triangles or little scoop-shaped marks or little straight line marks or like a straight line cut that's already healed up that they will wake up and discover, or little bruises in certain parts of their body looking like little fingertip bruises. Or people will sometimes wake up and their clothes that they went to sleep in are on backwards now or inside out or upside down, or even that they've, found that they have somebody else's clothing on that they didn't go to sleep with. So the clothes they didn't go to sleep. So, people do have little hints and warnings and so forth. There are lots of different kinds of them.
Well, mine was very large hints. My vehicle and myself were in a different place. So.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes. So, and it was not something I could have mindlessly done. And my brain was very mushy, too. So that was an indicator to me that, something had gone on.
Oh,
but
yes.
I had before that, and when I first started having experiences, before I even was involved in knowing and learning any of this, I said, feels like someone's unzipping my head and pouring stuff in there. And I had no idea what downloads were at the time. I mean, I never heard that word. I never heard anyone describe it until I listened to an interview with someone who had, described it and used the word download. So that was, so it's all very interesting, but, I'm not concerned about hypnosis. I've been trained in it and myself, and I'm a very good candidate, but I'm just not sure that it's appropriate if there's a timing involved to, try to force that lid open earlier than when that timing is right for that information. So I don't know how to make that decision, really.
Oh, sure. I understand what you're saying. Well, I think as far as the information is concerned, you would not be able to force that part open if you did a regression and found out about the whole experience that you were having. If they want to keep that information private from you, they will. They have ways of doing that, and I don't understand what those ways are, but we know that they have them. So if you wanted to do a regression to find out the kinds of beings that are interacting with you, or the kinds of procedures or other kind of learning maybe that they're imparting to you, or any healing they might be doing on you, etc. That it would be up to you whether you think that would be worthwhile, but the information would not be released until they're ready to release it, even if you did a regression to it.
Which brings me to the question I had next, which was, I know about you and your work with this, and you're obviously a trained professional with vast amounts of experience. And is there a network or a place where people can go from all across the country that is available for them to look at professionals? Because it's not your average psychotherapist you want to approach with the alien issue.
Oh, that's right. I agree completely.
How does one find is there some sort of network of, trained professionals in hypnotherapy that are open to these kinds of regressions?
Oh, yes, that's a perfect question. I happen to be president now for a few years of a group called the Academy of Clinical Close Encounter Therapists. I'll say that again because that's a mouthful. Academy of Clinical Close Encounter Therapists. Our initials, the acronym is ACCET, A-C-C-E-T. And we do have a website. We have a whole network of members who are qualified to do this particular kind of work. They may do other hypnosis work as well, but they're qualified to do this sort of work with people who experience extraterrestrial encounters. So the website for that, I'm glad to have you know it and anybody else know it, www.accet and then the word counselors, C-O-U-N-S-E-L-O-R-S, and then the number 4, okay, counselors 4, experiencers.org. So I'll say that again because it's a long one. ACCET counselors, number 4, experiencers.org. And I do get many, many requests for people all over the country and even in other countries, and I try to fill those requests as best I can, and I'm always keeping a lookout for other people who are qualified to do this work, to add to our referral list. So you might even be one of those people yourself.
Yes, I've been a licensed counselor in the past. I'm not licensed at this point, but I certainly appreciate this information. That's really wonderful that there's an organization like this.
Oh, yes, that's good. And there's another one, too, that is just being formed. Well, we've been forming for a few months, and this is called, and we will have a website quite soon, and it's going to be very comprehensive, have fascinating articles by very brilliant people, and I just feel so privileged to be part of this. The acronym for this group is FREE, F-R-E-E, and the name of the group is Foundation for Research into Extraterrestrial, so it's such a big long word to write out, encounters. So I'll repeat that, Foundation for, and that's F-O-R in this case, Research into Extraterrestrial Encounters. We will also have a list of therapists and hypnotherapists, regression therapists who are qualified to do this work, and there'll be lots of interesting information. We're gathering it right now that will be on this website, including the understanding of quantum physics that helps us to understand how all these things can happen.
Well, that has been my quest since my experience is it, was it vortexual? Was it being taken up? Was it some sort of Stargate? I've just been on a quest to understand the physics.
Well, that's great.
Yeah.
We have Edgar Mitchell on our board, and Rudy Schild, astrophysicist from Harvard, and quite a number of excellent minds, excellent people. We're all getting together to put this together because we know that there are so many people who really want good genuine, solid information about this.
And, you know, I have tried to figure out ways to go out and measure and you know, is IR going to, you know, help me, you know, see what's going on out there? Is it a physical phenomena that moves or stays still? You know, I've been playing with all kinds of things in my mind technologically. So it'd be really an interesting site to, and, you know, hopefully there's a place for questions and talking, because I think there's more, just one of many that would like to find, you know, if you have an experience and maybe you could go back and scientifically, you know, create some data about actual physical things going on in the place it's happened. If, you know, if it's related to that, who knows, right?
Oh, but right. Well, that's just the kind of thing that we hope that there, you know, will be people responding and contributing from their own experiences or contributing more understanding. So it's really exciting that this is coming together at this time.
Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you very much for letting me talk for a while and
you're welcome.
Get some questions answered and participate.
Yeah, Andrew, is it allowable for her to let me know who she is? Or
yeah, I was about to ask for her name because I never asked for that.
Oh, it's Karen.
Karen.
And
all right.
The number I'm calling off is my number, so feel free to call me back on that, either one of you. So.
Okay.
Okay, or my email address is Barbara _line Lamb, LAMB, at Verizon.net. So I would really like it if you would send me an email, and I can kind of keep track of you and let you know when this new website is up and let you know about the asset organization too.
I will email today so you know that.
Okay, Barbara.
Awesome.
All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks a lot for calling,
Karen. Thank you for calling.
Later. Bye. All right, we got time for only one more caller before I get into the ET-related stuff. So area code 865. I can let you on for about 10 minutes. Let me just make sure it's on here because computer's slow today. Okay, area code 865. You got 10 minutes. Welcome.
Hello. I was just listening to the show and was very grateful to hear it. It's wonderful. Very
glad you're listening. All right. Thanks a lot. So that gives us more time to talk about ETs. Thanks for calling. Later. All right. So, Barb, in regards to ETs and ET abductions, we have, well, the show ends at 8, but I got to let you off about 2 minutes before the hour. So, in regards to ET abductions, it's not really an abduction because before, like I said in the beginning of the show, when you incarnated into this reality, you made an agreement that the aliens would take you. Now, okay, why, but just for the purposes of this conversation, let's just call it an abduction. Why do malevolent and benevolent ETs, why would each group of ETs, malevolent or benevolent, want to abduct humans?
Well, first of all, I really personally object to thinking of some of them as malevolent. Now, definitely there are some beings who come and take people away for an hour or 2 hours or so and return them. And they are doing things that people do not like. So it's easy to attribute malevolency to them. But actually, I mean, they're very much like we are. And I think we have to acknowledge that we take animals, even animals we're trying to save from extinction, and we, you know, shoot them with those pellets that make them inert and unconscious for a short period of time, and we go tag them and check them and do different things with them, particularly if they're animals that could be really dangerous to us. And then we let them go, and they go doing their own thing. And we do animal experiments, vivisection. Oh my goodness, the things we do are really quite amazing for supposedly decent people. And it's all, well, a lot of it's in the name of products and science and learning and so forth. Well, I think that some of these beings, and they seem to be the ones that get the most notice in the media. Some of these extraterrestrial beings come and do experiments on our bodies and take samples of fluids and skin and all kinds of different things, reproductive materials included, and they put implants in people, the people whom they are interacting with anyway, not just everybody. And, they do these things that people understandably do not like. And so it's easy to think of them as being horrible and malevolent. But they may not be. They may just be doing scientific things, and some of that may even be for our benefit, even though we don't see that immediately. There are so many different beings. The beings that have come through the regression work that I've done, and it's at least 2,200 regressions now that I've done for extraterrestrial encounters. And out of that 2,200 or so regressions, there are many, many, many different kinds of beings. I mean, I've really lost track. And, of course, we're going by the descriptions of the people who are reliving those experiences through regressions. But anyway, there are a lot of different kinds of beings that come here briefly, and they all seem to have their own agenda. It's very easy in thinking and talking about this phenomenon to sort of lump them all in, like benevolent or malevolent. I just don't think that's the case. I don't think that's fair or accurate, first of all. So I'd like to get that understood, that this is where I'm coming from. But some of the beings are definitely very helpful to human beings. They are teaching them psychic skills. They're upgrading their consciousness. They're upgrading people's spirituality or spiritual understanding of existence and all that is in existence, the different cosmoses, the different dimensions, the billions of galaxies, the different life forms, the different philosophies. It's just such a huge cosmos full of so much, and there are very intelligent groups out there, many of them, who already, probably long ago, have formed councils. Like sometimes it's been called the Intergalactic Council or the Great Federation. There are different names that people call these council meetings, sometimes comprised of thousands of delegates from different beings, different civilizations. And then, according to some of them, there are many beings who are outside of those councils or federations. Just like on Earth, we have the United Nations, and there are many nations that participate in that, but we also have many countries that have nothing to do with the United Nations. They're just kind of doing their own thing. So I think it's that way on the macroscopic scale of the cosmos. So there's an awful lot going on, and I just don't think it's fair for us humans, as being relatively unaware of all of this and all of these beings and all of these agendas, to assume that some of them are really malevolent. It's easy to get extraterrestrials, especially the ones who do not do these things that we favor so much, get them mixed up with other kinds of beings, like some people talk about demonic beings. I don't think that any of the extraterrestrials are demonic beings, although I could see subjectively, personally, why somebody could draw that conclusion. But I don't think so. So I don't like to categorize them like that. Some of these beings are so wonderful They may be even other dimensional, but they do appear to people, and they do seem to take them to certain experiences. So they must be at least of our dimension to a certain extent, the physical dimension, or they may be able to operate in it. But some of these beings have taken some of my clients to exquisite spiritual experiences. They've taken them to wonderful, glowing, luminous beings out in space who don't seem to be on any sort of structure or floor, but just in space, in existence. They've even taken with 3 of my different people who don't even know each other, have been taken to a huge, what looks like amoeba sort of being out in space. You know, one that you can sort of look into, rather semi-transparent and full of lovely colors, blues and pinks and mauves and purples. And the client whom I'm regressing has sometimes been taken by one being, which we would call extraterrestrial, taken out in space and then into this huge amoeba-like being who can remind people a bit of a jellyfish, like that image, sort of semi-transparent, full of colors, undulating, moving gracefully, moving in space like a jellyfish would move in the water. And they can see sometimes some texture inside that being that they're going to. And then the person is absorbed into this being and may be quite frightened at first, like, oh, what am I getting into? And I just don't know this. Wow, and it's so huge. But once they're inside that which seems like a living, pulsating, undulating being, they are supremely happy. They have unconditional love coming to them, through them, surrounding them, and they report being clairsentient. In other words, they know everything about everything. Anything they have wanted to know about anything, they instantly know. And then with feeling this huge personal regard, this unconditional love, it's a glorious, absolutely fantastic experience like none other that they've ever experienced on Earth. And when it's time for the person to leave that being and come back with the being who brought them there, back to their regular life on Earth, oh, they are terribly sad because that was so elegant, so wonderful. So that's one of the kinds of things that happens with some of these encounters. And several other people, individually, unbeknownst to each other, have been taken by a being which seems like way, way, way out in space, not even in a craft, but harmlessly taken. And then they see in the distance, floating in space, a huge city. It looks like a crystalline city, a city of lights. Like all the structures are crystalline, and they're flooded with light, and they're emanating light. And the person will be taken right into one of those crystalline beings or buildings and meeting these extremely fine, advanced beings who might be, we might call extraterrestrial, we might call them spiritual beings, or spiritual extraterrestrials, I tend to think of them, and have some wonderful experiences of learning new things, feeling blessed, and that's a magnificent experience. And then even short of that, many people are having very positive experiences with extraterrestrials. They may be taken onto a craft and put on a table, like a medical type table, and they might think, ooh, I wonder what's going to happen. And they are checked over, sometimes with instrumentation, sometimes with scanning with the being's hands. And I always have them look at the beings who are around the table and describe them as much as they can. So we get a sense that there are a number of different kinds of extraterrestrial beings working together with this person who's been taken for this. And so they may have some correction done by these beings for some kind of physical difficulty that they have. Sometimes they are out and out healed of a very serious condition, like cancer or a heart problem or a serious problem with one of their other internal organs, or just with their autoimmune system. There are many things that people have come to me have been healed of, or at the very least, the beings will sometimes telepathically tell the person lying on this medical type table, tell them that they have a problem with a certain part of their body, like let's say their liver, and that they really need to go to a doctor on Earth and have their liver checked and have something done to remedy it. So either they seem to warn people about conditions that the people might not be aware that they have, but which would be very serious, or they go right ahead and heal that malfunctioning. Sometimes these people, after the medical part of the experience, are sat up on the table and ushered by some beings into another room, and then there they are taught some things that they're very happy to be taught. Sometimes they're taught all kinds of psychic develop. They learn telepathy. They learn to psychometry, to read the energy of things that a person has owned. They can tell so much detail about the person from holding the person's ring or watch or something personal. And they're taught how to move things with their minds. They're taught also how to communicate telepathically with other beings who have that ability. Particularly the extraterrestrials seem to be communicating telepathically. And so there's a lot of learning that goes on. And some of my people have even learned healing skills so that they can come back and heal their fellow people or heal animals who need healing. Some of them are taught more technological aspects of things, and they will come back and be able to use that technological knowledge. Some of them are being taught about star maps or different parts of the galaxy or the constellations or any aspect of the universe, so that will be helpful to them in a particular way, sometimes helpful in their work. So there's a lot that goes on. I'm just giving a few examples, but a lot that goes on that's really very, very beneficial. So many people that I've regressed have the hesitation to being regressed. They certainly have evidence that they've had some peculiar things happen, and maybe even that the things that have happened have been done by extraterrestrial beings. And very understandably, because of all the negative publicity that's been given by about that they really feel some real hesitation or outright fear in having a regression to find out. And I certainly can understand that. But when they finally come and they have a regression, they are usually so grateful for it because it opens up into aspects that they never would have expected, and they really welcome those aspects. And there may be some moments, some aspects of the experience that they don't care for so much, and that are puzzling and confusing to them. So I don't want to give the impression that all is sweetness and light with every single encounter. But even people who have reproductive material taken from their bodies, in other words, eggs from females, sperm from males, and even if they discover that they have a mysterious pregnancy, even though they hadn't been close to anybody for a significant period of time, and yet here they are pregnant, and even if that pregnancy seems to disappear somehow after a month and a half or 2 months or 3 months, and that is very puzzling, of course. And even though they may be taken to see a little embryo or more developed into a fetus in a gestation tank of fluid by the extraterrestrials, and then see a newborn baby taken out of the tank of fluid when mature enough as an infant, and even if they see that same child growing up here and there over a period of years, even though these things that seem a little bit more bizarre to many, that they come to understand why this is important, why the beings are doing this sort of thing. And that kind of material can come out in the regressions. So it's worthwhile, in my opinion, for a person to get to the point where they have the courage to have a regression, to find out some of the details of what's been going on. It's really a vast picture that anybody who's having a lot of the medical things happening are also having some of the educational, inspiring things happen that they would never know about unless they did the regressions. So I do encourage people who are considering having a regression for this purpose to allow in some of these more positive possibilities. And again, I find that a new person who will come to me will go into a regression, and there will be one particular primary being of one of these extraterrestrial species who seems to be primarily the one working with them in that encounter. And as the regression and the encounter goes on, they will say things like, "Oh, I didn't remember this in my conscious life, but now I know that I've been with this particular one before." And they'll say further on in the regression, "Yes, I know this one very well. I've been with him ever since I can remember, but I'd totally forgotten about it in my daily life." And sometimes we'll go back to one of the earliest or even the first experience that the person has had with that being. And they will find that that being has been a guide, has been a friend, has been a support through all the years of that person's life so far. And that the being has goodwill at heart, that the being has maybe even cured them and healed them of various things along the way, or certainly speeded up some of the childhood illnesses, the measles or whooping cough or whatever, that we tend to get here on Earth, so that there's a comradeship, a companionship, a guidance that has been going on between many people and their personal extraterrestrial. So to find things out like that is really worthwhile. And especially when some people have a glimpse in their memory of, maybe, let's say, a tall, very thin being who looks rather like a big bug. That may turn out to be a mantis being who is very wonderful, very kindly, very loving, very understanding, and yet just the glimpse that the person might remember of that being, is pretty creepy and might even be frightening. So some of the most frightening or different looking beings from our point of view as humans turn out to be some of the finest, some of the most wonderful. For instance, many people have experiences to some extent with what we call a reptilian being. And the reptilian beings so often look big and muscular and tough. They look like really well-built athletes. And they often seem to be very proud of themselves. Sometimes they wear glorious cloaks and medallions and insignias and shoulder epaulets or breastplates of metal, it looks like. And they seem very grandiose and very egotistic. But when a person regresses to an encounter with them, there may be many other things going on, like a lot of information given by that reptilian being, or some compassion, or maybe a person will discover that a reptilian being has been with her or him all of his or her life and was a great companion and a teacher and a playmate even during childhood in these encounters. And then maybe the reptilian, depending on the kind of reptilian, will want to have a family with that person, using their reproductive material to create hybrids. I think there are several, at least, different species of extraterrestrials who like to create hybrids, partly their material and partly human. And a lot of those humans, or I should say, a lot of those hybrids are seen by people on the ships, the UFOs. And now we have, I think, amongst us on Earth, quite a number, I have no idea how many, but quite a number of hybrids of the different extraterrestrial species combined with human, hybrids who are living here amongst us. And the ones that I have met, I've met about 10 of these people whom I am convinced are hybrids. Some of them are hybrid in the sense of being combined with Pleiadian beings, some with Arcturian beings, some with Andromedan beings, and others with beings whose names we don't even hear, because most of those beings don't even have names. They don't need to, because they're so telepathic and they're so tuned in energetically that they just don't need to classify and name things the way that we humans do. So these hybrids, whom I know, are very fine humans, and you would think of them as humans, I do. They look like humans, and yet when you talk to them, you realize that they may have some characteristics internally that are different than ours. Their digestive systems may be a bit different, and sometimes they just cannot tolerate the kinds of food that we readily eat. But they can tolerate some substances here on Earth and concentrate on eating those. Or they may have a different bone constituency, or a different blood constituency, a different body temperature. Their body temperature, instead of being 98.6, is often about 97 point something. And it always is lower like that. They may be very slim or maybe not, depending on the species of extraterrestrial that they are partly comprised of. But the several people I know who I truly believe are hybrids, well, there are probably about 12 of them now, I feel quite certain about, and I'm open to learning more people who are hybrids, to getting to know them. Anyway, they seem to be pleased to have somebody to talk to who appreciates that part of their heritage. And they certainly don't go around talking about that with everybody, because everybody would think they're too weird. But it's wonderful when they do have somebody who knows about this and can talk to them about it. And the ones that I know, without exception, are here on Earth to help upgrade humanity, to help raise our consciousness, to help us to be much more decent, helpful, feeling full, compassionate people. Some of them have said that their mission in this lifetime on Earth is to help bit by bit, as much as they can, in their own local area or through writing or radio broadcasts or films or whatever, to help upgrade all of humanity. Because so many of these beings out there, extraterrestrial beings, who do come together in these big federations, council meetings and so forth, they would love to have humans, beings, combine with them in those meetings. But they know that humanity needs a lot of upgrading.
And Barbara,
upgrading in consciousness. Yes.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but in the 5 minutes we have left, I want to get into that, because during my interview with Alfred Weber, he talked about how very special people like indigo children, crystal children, and star children and whatnot are actually being abducted at a higher rate now to get prepared for a consciousness shift that's supposed to happen around 2017. And Franco De Nicola has also talked about the consciousness shift happening around late 2017. And one reason this is happening is Fukushima, would be undergoing mass extinction if there was no consciousness shift, and the aliens are actually trying to keep Fukushima in check to prepare for this consciousness shift. So in the last 4.5 minutes, can you say anything at all about this consciousness shift that the ETs are preparing for and abducting star children, indigo children, and crystal children for this consciousness shift?
Yes, good. That's such a very important point. Yes, well, I think that these other very high-minded, spiritually advanced races out there have sent the special children, star children, crystal children, indigos, and so forth. And they are trying to put them in different places in the world, have them be born here to regular parents, but with this universal spiritual emphasis, because they see what we're doing on Earth. It's not just Fukushima, although that's a big disaster for sure, but they just see all the warlikeness, all the competitiveness, all the greed, all the one group against another, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, they see us as very retrograde And in a lot of ways we are. That doesn't mean every individual is retrograde, but they just, we're behind, we're subpar compared to what we could be. So, yes, I mean, there are a number of theories about the ascension process that the Earth is going through. It's very slow because some people are working in the opposite direction. There's the photon belt that apparently is, according to experts on that, is really influencing us to ascend not only in consciousness, but to have our physical bodies becoming lighter and lighter and more refined. They would like to see, these intelligences out there, they would like to see the whole planet ascend. Now that doesn't necessarily mean rise up in the air, but it means becoming more refined, a finer, higher vibration. And if that happens, then our behavior as a worldwide community would really slowly change to getting away from this selfishness and greed and competitiveness and warlikeness. So that would be a wonderful change. Whether it's going to happen, all at once in 2017, I'm not privy to that information, but I do certainly hope and think that possibly we are moving in that direction, and we do need to. And there are some theories that if we don't move in that direction, it will happen probably because of disasters, including nuclear. It will happen that we can no longer live on planet Earth. Now that is so huge, it's almost impossible to really conceive. So time does seem to be of the essence from a lot of these beings' point of view. I think people who know more about this are giving wise counsel, and I think we definitely need to pay attention to that.
All right, thanks, Barbara. I'm glad you got your take on that, but we have come to the end of the show, so I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell all my guests. My goal on this show is to get out information, and that, among other things, means getting as many different people on the show as possible before giving any one specific guest double dips. So don't expect a call from me in the near future to come on my show again, because there's a lot of other fascinating individuals on planet Earth who deserve some glory on my show. So, yeah,
sure, Could I just mention quickly about my crop circle tours, in case anybody's interested in that. My website is barbaralambt.com. Barbara Lamb, Lamb, MFT for Marriage and Family Therapist.com. And there's lots of information on the various things that I do.
All right, thanks, Barbara. Thanks. It was a pleasure having you